I'm working on a couple new film projects in over 10 years. It's a little bit intimidating. It's been a while. Recently, I talked to my dad, asked what the title of the project that I was working on was, and I told him it's called Bareback. Then he asked what it's about, and I kind of had to blush. I've never avoided creating gay characters or felt I had to explain or dumb them down. My dad and my mom have seen all of my edgy films and projects. They've read my stories. And recently my dad said, when I told him I was doing this, he said, why don't you tell your story? He said, everybody sees your films and reads your stuff and probably wonders who's this person doing that stuff. And he said, the advice he gave me is say something nice that can help people understand who you are. So I've never done anything like this before, so I thought I would share that with you guys tonight. When we moved to America, we had to keep it a secret. We couldn't tell everyone, just our closest relatives. My dad told me that he had to pay off someone who knew someone else in order for us to leave Romania. You couldn't just move to America back then. This is back in '82. And you couldn't leave with all of your money. You could leave with some of it, but then you had to figure out what to do with the rest of it. It's all very complicated. At that time, I didn't know that I was bisexual or gay or anything like that. I was 7 years old. Friends who drove very fast sports cars and wore leather jackets. I was a really little guy. I don't look anything like I look now. Romania was a communist ruled country, and the communists hated gays. They lumped gays with pedophiles and flashers who opened their trench coats in parks. It makes no sense, but you kind of have to get used to that with communist governments. That wasn't why we moved to America, but me being gay, but that was, I guess it's part of my story. I didn't know English when we left, and I didn't speak English for the first couple of years when we arrived. We arrived in New York. That's where we immigrated to. We lived in Astoria, and then we lived in Queens. You can't speak when you can't speak a language, you keep yourself busy in school. You kind of sing little songs to yourself, which is what I did. And I would oftentimes just doodle and draw in class. Everybody kind of avoids you because you just don't have anything you could say. Sometimes I would actually sit down on the floor underneath my desk, and I would play with my pencils, kind of creating little stories. Half the time, the teacher and the other students didn't even mind or interrupt me because they didn't really know what to do with me. Eventually, I learned how to speak English, and I could keep a conversation, which was life-altering. And then over time, I could make friends. You always feel different when you move here from another country, at least I did. And you try to be a little bit less different every day, but you never quite fully feel anything but different. It's really, really good training for being in the closet. We eventually moved to Los Angeles, palm trees and sunny skies, shorts and sunglasses. I ended up coming out of the closet when I was 16. My mother cornered me. She was wondering what I was up to. I kept coming home with pocketfuls full of condoms and pamphlets with things of how to put on condoms. And she had no idea what was going on. She was really confused. What was I doing and where was I coming from and who was I hanging out with? I explained to her that talk to other young people to stay HIV negative. And this is back in the 90s, and have safer sex. I was having sex, I said I wasn't. Honestly, I wasn't. Any of this made sense to her. But I enjoyed it. We would go to different nightclubs and different bars, and it gave me a chance to be able to make friends and kind of come out of my own skin. The Gay and Lesbian Center in Los Angeles, which back then was on Highland, used to have these groups where you could sit and talk with other young gay people. And from those groups, some of us would organize and we'd go to the different venues and pass out condoms and as part of this outreach. Eventually, my mother found just stacks of condoms in all my pockets and my jackets. And she asked where I was going, and I told her some of the clubs were gay. So she said that I must be gay. So her deduction was, she asked me if I liked boys, and I said yes. And she asked me if I liked girls, and I said yes. This was a stumbling block, but she was going to push through this. She asked me if I had kissed girls, and I had said yes. And she'd asked me if I'd ever kissed boys, and I said, no, not yet. But when she asked me if I would, I told her yes. So that was enough evidence. Case closed. I was gay. She threw a huge fit, called my dad, who was back in Romania on business, and I had come out of the closet. So the doors had broken open. I ended up in high school. I went to a Catholic high school. I got into a couple of fistfights over it, but overall it wasn't a bad experience. I actually got to go to the March on Washington, and I got to see the quilt, which was a big deal back then. This was all in the early 90s. Things were all really, really different then. And being gay was a little bit different too. When I visited my father a couple years ago, I made some gay friends hanging out in a gay nightclub in Bucharest, in Romania. It's actually called Queen. It's weird. Nightclubs in Romania, gay nightclubs are different than here. They're only this one's only open on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and this is like right now. You can be gay there, but you can't really be out, and it's almost like everything gay has kind of been frozen in Romania. When I made new friends in Romania, when I visited my dad, these Romanian gay friends, and I told them that I'd come out of the closet and I've lived out of the closet my whole life and been married to a man, they actually said that it was really hard to relate to. It's kind of just like I'm from another planet. Things over there are done much more hush-hush, and they can't fully understand or relate to some of the stuff that I told them. Before coming out, I'd gone to Romania again. This was back when I was like 13 or 14 during the summer. It was nice to leave LA and speak Romanian to other people, but I was closeted. I made my first gay friend, and we pretty much hung out all summer, and I developed a massive crush on him. When I got back to LA, we would talk on the phone for hours of long distance telephone bills, getting closer to him. I think that's when my parents probably had a suspecting feeling, but I don't know if they necessarily ran with it. And we kept this up for months. Eventually it became too expensive, so we started doing letters, and then of course it faded off. He never said the gay word, and I never did either, and I don't think we had any idea that that was actually happening. It was stayed in Romania at that time and kept living there, and then back to the States, and I just kind of continued out, coming out. Identity is a weird thing. Just when you think you pick on, you realize fully fit. Being something just doesn't always fit, and it always feels like there's something new to be. That doesn't really fit. When I moved to Chicago 5 years ago, these labels and identities shifted around even more. I was now gay in a new place, and I was in my 40s, and I was one of the gay divorcees. There's a few, I know, watch out. Talk about being a weird thing. Being gay in Chicago is really different than being gay on the West Coast, but it's nothing like being gay in Romania. It's really, really nice here, obviously. I love it. It's my new home. But it once again kind of feels very jarring and different, and it's always kind of like adapting. Just like being gay in Romania feels different, like being gay in New York and also in Chicago. I think about a lot of this stuff now because I spend a ridiculous amount of time at home, like you guys do. Recently my dad said that I'm actually a cliche. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you're out of the closet. You have 2 dogs. You wear a beard. You work in the entertainment industry, and you're making movies. And I said, oh. And he replied after that saying, it's very, very American. You've definitely become very Americanized. So before hanging up with him, he said, are you going to tell me what your new next movie is about? What this movie called Bareback is about? And I told him, well, it's just more gay stuff. That's kind of what I do. So thanks for letting me share that with you guys.